Most email marketers believe that because they followed the instructions to set up authentication given to them by their email marketing platform, they think that they're good to go. But hackers and spammers are now heavily exploiting this very common gap in your authentication. So whenever all of the changes that Google and Yahoo were making starting in February and continuing on through the first part of the year, if you're using any type of email marketing software, so it might be Keep, ActiveCampaign, MailChimp, all the different platforms that are available out there, they try to inform you, like, hey, these are the changes that you need to make so that you follow these new rules. So you need to set up 3 different types of records: DKIM, SPF, and DMARC. So they gave you some generic instructions because you have to remember they're talking to thousands of users on their platform. And so unfortunately they can't give you specific instructions for your use case, and they also needed to make it simple and easy for you to follow. Many people had a lot of that already in place. There were a lot of people that didn't have all of those, different records in place. And some of the platforms like Keep, for example, they changed the way that they were doing things. So new records actually had to be created instead of relying on the way that it was originally set up. And so all of these changes, were really come about because of the new rules that Google and Yahoo were starting to roll out. The biggest gap, the one that hackers and spammers are exploiting, relates to the DMARC record. So to become compliant with Google and Yahoo's new rules, you simply need a DMARC record present. And usually it's the really short thing, is that you've got DMARC, P equals none. You've got a none policy, but you have that record present in your DNS. That's where the hackers and spammers are exploiting, because DMARC, and many people don't know this, the R in DMARC stands for reporting. So by default, whenever you have a DMARC record, there's reports that are getting created, and they need to be sent somewhere so that you can look to see what email platforms are sending from your domain, purporting to be from your domain. And so if you don't have a statement in your DMARC record, or you don't or use a tool that is accepting those reports and basically deciphering all that data, hackers and spammers can look at your DMARC record and be like, oh, you know what? Scott's not actually monitoring reports on his DMARC. So he'll never know that we're spoofing his domain and we're sending out emails supposedly coming from his domain, and that's actually damaging my domain reputation. So we think that we've got everything set up because, we're compliant, we have the technical DMARC record, but the window is wide open. It's like anybody can come in and out without us even knowing it because we're not monitoring those DMARC reports. If you think about it, and there's a couple different ways that you can view this. There's one is if you're driving down the highway, pretty much every country has a law, every state says you have to wear your seatbelt. But there's a lot of people that it's like, I don't like seatbelts, they're uncomfortable, it's like, they're constricting or whatever. But because they don't want to get a ticket, they don't want to get pulled over, okay, I'm going to become minimally compliant. So I'm going to plug in the seatbelt, but I'm going to put it behind me instead of having it across my chest. You're technically compliant, but bam, when you get into an accident, it's not going to do you any good. And so having a DMARC record, it's like, I've got the DMARC record, I'm compliant, but I'm not monitoring the reports. I don't have reporting set up, and I'm not actually looking at them. It's not doing you any good because the hackers and spammers can be doing all kinds of damage without your knowledge. This exploit, just kind of on the surface, it's like, that's not really that big of a deal, right? But with all of the changes that the mailbox providers have been making, it's becoming extremely more difficult for the hackers and spammers to kind of do their own thing without it hurting everybody else. And so what they're doing is what they're piggybacking off of the small businesses. Now, sure, they're going after some of the bigger corporations as well, but the bigger companies who are doing lots of email marketing, they've got all of these things in place and they're actively monitoring. But it's the small business owners like you and I that, we've got so many other things on our plate. We don't have time to worry about this. And they know that. And so they're like, okay, we're going to start looking at the smaller guys. Oh, and Scott doesn't have his DMARC reporting set up. So he has no clue where emails are coming from. We can use his domain to send out these unwanted emails. And what ultimately happens is over time, they start ramping up the spam emails that they're sending out, supposedly coming from us. The more spam complaints that we get, that damages our reputation and it hurts our ability to send our legitimate emails to the people who have opted in and who want to hear from us. And so we have no idea that all of this is going on until it's too late. And I've actually worked with several clients. So I've got a number of clients where I monitor their DMARC reports for them. And starting about April, I noticed that for some of these domains, I had been monitoring the DMARC reports since like December and January. Everything was clean. Only emails were going out from the platforms that they really were emailing from. And then starting about March, April, I noticed that for a handful of my clients, all of a sudden, overseas bad actors were sending 1, 2, 3 different emails every month just to see if somebody is actually looking at the reports. To see, oh, is anybody paying attention? And of course I was, so we were able to tighten up the policy to say, hey, you can't use our domain, go find somebody else to destroy their reputation. And so, they're looking at and these are companies that some of them are solopreneurs, some of them are relatively small businesses, maybe low 6 figures a year in revenue, and they're looking at everybody. What's the easiest way for us to get our spam out there, and then you're just collateral damage. The biggest step that everybody needs to take is make sure that you have reporting enabled for your DMARC record. So it needs to have a specific statement in it. And if you use different DMARC tools that are out there, they can actually give you what needs to be in your DMARC record so that the reports can be received by them. Now, if you try to set it up and you want you put your email address in the DMARC record so that you get the DMARC reports, when you get those, you're not going to be able to understand them because they're written in, basically some type of code, web programming code that it makes it hard to understand. But if you use different services, it can actually receive those reports, parse that data, and put it into usable information, charts and graphs and tables that you can then understand and say, oh, I'm good. Nobody else is using my domain. Or, hey, wait a minute. I don't recognize this platform or this IP that's actually sending emails using my domain. Really, to find an expert on this, number one is you want somebody who knows about DMARC. So, ask them. You want to interview people. I have found so many IT companies and MSPs that, you would think that they would know about this, but email deliverability, just because it's related to technology, isn't necessarily in their wheelhouse. So they don't know how to properly set these up. Secondly, it's more than just having the reporting enabled. It's who's going to look at those reports on a regular basis and understand what those reports mean. And so you want to find the person that can actually do that for you, because if nobody's looking at the reports, the damage can still be done. And so somebody like myself, I offer those services where we can actually set up, we receive the reports, we look at them every single week, we monitor those, we make changes based upon what we're looking at. That's what you want to look for in a partner to help you make sure that you've got your email fully protected and fully authenticated.
Thanks for that, Scott. If you want to hear more from Scott, find his book, Hit the Inbox: how to avoid the spam filter and grow your business with email marketing in the link below this video. If you want to learn from experts like Scott and collaborate with your peers as you automate your business's sales, marketing, and operations, join us in the Monkey Pod membership, also in the link below.